friend Joseph Jefferson said, "There are no small parts, only small actors." When I was there for a second season, I received a minor role when the critic for the Cleveland Herald wrote, "Miss Clara Morris allotted the small part very well." Cut it out, folded it in a piece of paper, ran home to show it to my mother, who was very impressed. Well, now I look at these words and they're rather dry and scant. But then they had all the sweetness of a June rose. But perhaps the most thrilling experience I ever had at Ellsler's was when Edwin Booth came to play Hamlet. The lady who was, all girls have their gods. I mean, mine was Edwin Booth, and the actress who was to play Gertrude had had an accident, and I was called upon to play the role. I was 16. I thought I was being forced upon him. And even though he agreed he looked more like my father, he gave me notes for the closet scene, and he was very kind. Afterwards, when the applause began, I ran off stage, and he took my hand in his, and he said, "We must not keep them waiting, my dear." And then, later, he tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "My Gertrude, you're very young, but you know how to pay a pretty compliment. Thank you, my child." I felt like a goddess floating on a pink cloud. Well, Mr. Ellsler's faith in my ability to be on the same stage with Joseph Jefferson and Edwin Booth only strengthened my resolve to go to New York. After 8 seasons and 28 productions, I asked him for a line of introduction to 1 or 2 managers. He wrote to 4. With this brief note, if you have an opening for a young woman named Clara Morris for leading a leading juvenile business. Augustine Daly responded, "If you can send the young woman to me, I will consider her proposal, will engage no actress without seeing her." Well, when I met with Mr. Daly at his theater on 24th Street, every word I spoke rubbed Mr. Daly's fur the wrong way. In spite of my objections to the fact that he thought I was a comedy woman, but after a while of back and forth, he offered me $35 a week, which he said he would double if I made a favorable impression.
I joined Stanislavski and the Moscow Art Theater, and the first thing I learned was to throw away my courses. Once you get out of their ghastly grips, you never want them back. But it was Stanislavski that taught me that there was art, and there was a world of characters. The great joy is not in playing a character, but in creating them. And of course there I met my dear Orlenev. Oh, what a little goose. I admired him so much back then. His acting, his directing. He seemed to me to be so dashing, so talented, so tall. I knew that it was with him that I would reach farther than those secondary roles that Stanislavski mercilessly doled out for me. He took me to New York, and together we scrounged, we scrimped, we sold our very souls to create a theater there on the Lower East Side. We barely spoke any English then, but we were quite the sensation. The chosen people put us on the map. But Orlenev, he hadn't any real talent. His acting, it was thin and hysterical, and he seemed to grow thinner and shorter as I grew more and more. Nazimova. Not your classic beauty, but it is the strength of the character that lasts. And who needs another Mary Pickford, huh? Orlenev, he got me every role imaginable. We worked in vaudeville, cast as gypsies, beauties from the Orient. Huh? But it was I who made the costumes, managed the house, balanced the books, and scrubbed the theater. It was I who was offered the Broadway contract by that darling and demanding swell, Henry Miller. And at long last it was I who rose up out of the ashes and left Orleans like a phoenix rising. Don't get me wrong. We both loved each other in our own fashions, and I gave him all the money I could. I spared nothing for my lovers. If I can tell you about that. But my heart remains solitary. Henry told me I must learn English. And so I told myself I must think in English. And a year later, I knew English, even dreaming about it and dreaming it. And I became Broadway's first and best Hedda. And then finally, little Adelaide disappeared. Hedda, tall and imposing, El Glamour, high heels, darling, or should I call them stilts?
Yes, of course, I have a bit of history with the stage. I mean, yes, I went to Hollywood and did lots of films, but I'm very comfortable with the theater. I know how terribly wrong things can go. I was fired from my first job. Well, my first real role was the big pond in Great Neck, of all places. I was hired to understudy Lucille Nicholas. After a few days, they had me read, and I replaced her. Suddenly, I was the leading lady, with very little experience, only filled with a wild confidence based on nothing but energy and ego. I was terrified. I showed up at the theater 10 minutes before half hour, not good. When the play began, I got a few laughs, and overconfidence flooded in. My voice went up, my tempo increased. Apparently, and that is apparently to everyone else but me, I became very difficult to understand. Too high, too fast. No one said a word to me that night, but the next day, when I was leaving for the theater, I received a telephone call from my vocal coach, Frances Robinson Duff. She asked me to stop by and see her on the way. Well, as I left for the theater, I worried about being late for the curtain, but when I saw her long and very serious face, I knew. I've been fired. Oh dear, how embarrassing. They hired Lucille back and offered me my understudy job. I said no. I went back to my family in Connecticut with my tail between my legs, and we laughed it off. Well, 2 days later, I received not one, but 2 telephone calls from J.J. Schubert and Arthur Hopkins. They had seen me and thought I was good. Within a matter of days, I was offered my next job. As they say in New England, you don't like the weather? Stick around. You see how quickly things can change, Diana, just like that.
So, you've come to see Catwoman. Well, I'll do my best to please you. But first, I'd like to thank all of you, because over the years, you have adopted me and made me feel loved and wanted. And you love to talk about me. Of course you do. You say that I get up in the morning, slide my feet into mink-lined slippers, step over 7 men, and then brush my teeth with Dawn's very own. The truth is, I was a Catwoman long before I was cast as one on the Batman television series. Because, you see, I walk like a cat. I sing with a meow. My eyes are cat-like. And I always
plan on force.
But I am not here this evening as Katharine. I am here because Rebels for the Cause, an extraordinary youth organization, has chosen to honor me for community services rendered. Now, these bright young kids have cleaned up the streets of Southeast Washington, D.C., and they've raised monies to help purchase buildings that are now safe havens, providing countless self-improvement activities for the underprivileged. You know, back during the Civil Rights Movement, I grew an afro, and I took my show back home to Harlem, uptown to the almighty Apollo Theater. And I donated every penny I made from the Apollo audiences to Dr. King's peaceful, powerful movement. Because Dr. King had the right dream, equality for everyone. And Malcolm, we knew each other as kids in those mean streets of a bygone Harlem. But the last time I saw Detroit Red, we were having a wonderful reunion while sitting in the green room of the BBC television studios in London. Now, Malcolm told me that he was beginning to understand and even embrace Dr. King's tactics. He said he was beginning to believe that a peaceful movement supported by the masses was a much smarter way to make our country a better place for everyone. And that was the Sunday before Malcolm was assassinated.
But one of the theaters that I played in San Francisco in the 1880s was at the California Theater, and I have to say that was a lovely theater. That was a well-built theater. That was gold rush money that built that theater. And so I was playing there for 3 months, and then I left for a rest in Santa Barbara, and all of a sudden the manager of the California Theater is hysterical. I get a telegram that says, "You've got to come back. The lady who was supposed to be in our next play has had an accident. We have no filler for the season. Come back and do a play. Whatever you want to do, we'll let you do it." Well, I said, okay, because they were in a bind. I went. They picked this horrible verse play called Jane Shore about some king's mistress. It was terrible. I had done it, and I hated the thought of doing it again, but I was saving their theater, basically. I had forgotten that there was a terrible infestation of fleas out there then. They made all these costumes for me. I mean, these were period costumes. I had a ruby red velvet long gown with inset sleeves and hanging, you know, sleeves down here, and a train that was spur trimmed. Well, I went out on stage, and all of a sudden I started to feel the sting. You know, they were all around me. They were enjoying me, right, basically. And finally, I got to the point where I was scratching, and I called an actor over to stand behind me because it was very hard. You know, you're in a corset. And I saw one land here on my exposed skin. Whack! Thing fell to the ground. A drummer upstage left yelled out, "By God, she got him!"
Well, in 1981, when I was doing West Side Walls, things were on the verge of changing dramatically. I feel like we're in trouble when the bathroom and the bedroom get closer and closer to one another. You know what I mean? Do we have to see it all? Well, you, Alla, you know all about this.
Yes.
But I don't give a rat's ass what you do in your backyard garden of Alla pool. I just don't want to. What happened to a good old-fashioned, wonderful love story? Right? I'm not saying I'm a prude, God knows, but I don't understand some of these scripts that get produced on the theater as well as film, mostly film I'm talking about. But some of the basic tenets will always be the same, and that is you have to be out of your mind to be in a club where people want you. The four of us can talk about that. But you do it because there are some gems out there. And when you find a gem, wow.
Thank you, darling. First of all, I just want to say that anything you have heard, it is all true. Every single bit. I will not tell all the secrets, even though Kate is dying to hear. But I will say I, at one time, was the highest paid woman in Hollywood. Hollywood. Higher than Mary Pickford with the blonde hair. I bought the Garden of Alla. 50-50 Sunset Boulevard. Some say that this movie, Sunset Boulevard, what shit. About me? No. We lived. The parties were about life. They were nothing that was wrong, they were life. There was a kidney-shaped swimming pool designed for the Baltics. But I loved this place, and when I lost my fortune, which is fine because I did the things I loved in life. I produced Doll's House, Salome the movie, which the boys' club, it was too risque. What can you do? I turned the Garden of Alla into hotels. Alas, I was taken advantage of. They were turned into villas. And after Beverly Hills came around and everybody wanted to be behind the gates, no longer together, it fell out of fashion. But the memories of F. Scott Fitzgerald writing a postcard to himself, this is me, I exist, I am in the Garden of Alla, all of them.
Fascinating.
Orson Welles, my dear, was one hunk of a man. He was a giant of a man with the face of a baby. I loved Orson. Orson loved life. He enjoyed good food. He enjoyed good wine, having a wonderful time. He was a perfectionist. And he was very passionate about the theater. The theater was his first love. And it had been rumored that Orson and I, talking about the casting couch, Kitt, that Orson and I had a very...
Why do you look at me like that?
I just thought Kate
The
had
casting couch.
the casting couch.
It's a chair, not a couch.
Yes. Yes. But
Go on.
Orson and I were never, ever lovers. We were very good friends. So he did give me my first break as an actress, and after that, many, many roles followed.
But I do very quickly want to say, I see people, actors these days seem to be frightened to be themselves. They want to be what people want them to be. And so they become, we created ourselves. This is what we found about each other. And the joy is in the creating ourselves. None of us came from money, from a school of a particular place. Madonna is one word, but she has crews, cameras. We did it ourselves. So, the love and the fearlessness. Yes.
You are right about that. I mean,
She agrees.
I did come from some money. I was comfortable.
It's all right.
But yet, when I announced to my father that I was going to be an actress, oh my Lord, one step up from the street. But he did help me out, but he wanted me to realize that I had to make my way. Now, my feeling about it is very clear, very clear. My parents gave me every opportunity that I wanted as long as I could do it. You know what I mean? They weren't going to support me in some arcane, ridiculous. But it's nice to know women can produce, can write. If they're not asked, they're not going to do it. You never know, do you? And so for me, I just decided, and again, I did have the luxury of having money, but I used that luxury wisely. And when I found a project for myself, and I want you to know that I created every ounce of me. It was very calculated. It may not look that way, but it was.
That's great.
Yes. And I was born in abject poverty. I had to literally claw my way out of the cotton fields of South Carolina onto the stages of the world. And I did because I was determined to make it. And I think the fact that I had everyone against me, no one wanted me in my family, no one wanted me. I was given away by my mother. I never knew who my father was. And I was just rejected by my family. So I had to struggle to survive. But I always knew that I would make it. And I did not have an education. When I was sent to live with my aunt in Harlem, I'd never gone to school, so I was completely illiterate. I was attending the School of Performing Arts, and I was being tutored after school every evening because I had never had any schooling whatsoever. Like Clara and Alla, we were all self-taught women. Katharine had more of a privileged upbringing, but we all had to struggle. And also Katharine, because we're all women and we all had to deal with what has always been an industry still controlled by men. During our prospective times, and even today, we still have to struggle as women. So, and we were all leaders and activists in our own ways, I would say.
People were so concerned about nonsense, like me wearing pants. What the hell was the problem?
Life